As we move out of the impact of the second wave, the uncertainty of the third wave, a possible third wave, still faces us. Nevertheless, there are now encouraging signs that things may be improving. One very important factor to look at is how employment has fared, and have unemployment levels come down since the second wave has receded and some restrictions are beginning to open up. One gold standard of tracking employment figures is the data put out by the CMIE, and I'm joined today by Mr. Mahesh Vyas, the MD and CEO of CMIE, for more on this. Mr. Vyas, thank you so much for speaking with us on ET Now. Let me start right from what data you put out for the month of May, and we've pretty much completed the month of June, so perhaps we can put that in perspective. In the month of May, you reported that India had lost 15 million jobs. Has there been some extent of recovery in June as restrictions eased in various parts of the country once again?
Yes, there is an improvement. May was the worst that we had in terms of the labor statistics. Unemployment rate went up to nearly 12% in that month. There were serious job losses. But in the month of June, we see a substantial recovery on the unemployment rate. As of the latest last week's data, the unemployment rate was down to less than 9%. So that's a substantial fall in the unemployment rate from 12% down to 9%. And I see this improving even a little more as the month comes to an end.
So what are the factors that have led to this? Is it recovery that we are seeing in blue-collar jobs, in rural areas, in urban areas? And is this only an effect of increased mobility and easing of restrictions?
Well, it is largely about mobility. So the immediate impact of lifting of the restrictions on movement is what has led to a fall in the unemployment rate. So it's very, very sensitive. The unemployment rate is very sensitive to lockdowns. The moment you impose a lockdown, people cannot go out to work and they report as being unemployed because a large number of people are informally employed. So they are pushing a cart or they are doing some daily wage work like a plumber somewhere or a mason somewhere, a carpenter somewhere, a delivery boy somewhere as well. And many of these jobs dry up when you impose a lockdown. At the moment you lift the lockdown, even partially, these people come back to work. Maybe they get lower wages, but they come back to work because they can't afford sitting, doing nothing at home. So you immediately see, as soon as mobility increases, labor participation rate increases and the unemployment rate goes down. That's what's happened in June.
Now, so give us a sense of how robust this improvement is. In our previous conversations, I recall you talking about the impact of the pandemic overall, say in the last 18 months or so, and how the hit has also been to the slow formation of well-paying formal economy jobs. Are we seeing some of that also receding from June onwards?
See, the biggest takeaway from the experience of the last 18 months or so is that the first wave of COVID hit us very severely, raised unemployment rate, reduced the labor participation rate and the employment rate very severely. As the restrictions were removed, these numbers came back to partially to where they were before the lockdown. The recovery continued till around September or so, and partially, very marginally, even till December and Jan. But after January 2021, even before the COVID second wave hit us, the labor numbers started falling, started deteriorating. So we saw the employment rate go down, the labor participation rate go down, which means that the lasting impact of the hit to the economy started playing out. So first there was this big hit and we bounced back from there, but we did not bounce back completely. And after that initial bounce, we started sliding again. Then came COVID-2, we took a small hit again and came back. We're back to sliding. So what's happened? Let's take a long view. Before COVID hit us, in 2019-20, we had a labor participation rate of around 43%, 42.7%. We're down to 40% even now. So although the unemployment rate has recovered, the labor participation rate has not recovered entirely. The employment rate has not recovered entirely. It's still 1.5 to 2 percentage points lower than what it was before the pandemic hit us. So there is a lasting effect, which is lesser people are working in the economy even after claiming a recovery.
You know, in your latest piece, you also talk about how mobility is not enough, Mahesh, and you speak about the labor participation rate improving, not as good as it was before, as you've just explained, but you also link it to dwindling consumer sentiment. Now, if you can elaborate on this part, why do you think consumer sentiment is not keeping up with a recession in infections or receding of infections like the last time around?
So, if you remove restrictions, mobility will improve. That means people will go out to shop, to work, and so on and so forth. But this mobility is not enough because people will go out to buy a few things, to have face-to-face interactions. It's a little claustrophobic for most people living in the lower strata of the society to be stuck at home. So mobility, what I was saying in that piece, is that mobility is not enough. We require more than mobility. We require people to spend. We require people to be gainfully employed. And that is not happening. Now, consumer sentiments tells us about people's propensity to actually spend. Now, they may spend on their basic necessities. It's important to go and buy daily consumption items, but you will not go and buy a new shirt. You will not go and buy a new shoe. You will postpone those things because your sentiments are still not good. You'll still be saving for a third wave, for the fear of things getting worse going ahead. Mind you, the second wave was devastating in terms of deaths. We did not see so much of stress on livelihoods, but was very, very fearsome in terms of deaths. We can't count them correctly, but whichever way, it was very fearful. So the sentiments have been very, very subdued. Unemployment has recovered, but sentiments have not. Until sentiments don't recover, we will not spend. Till we don't spend, the recovery will not happen.
Where does this tie into, the hope of vaccination rollouts? What's also changed perhaps from June, and I would say the last week of June 21st onwards, when a new vaccination policy came into place. Everyone is eligible for a free vaccination above the age of 18, and we've seen the numbers go up, not as high as 86 lakhs in a day, but steadying around 40 to 50 lakhs a day. Do you think that brightens up the prospect of recovery now that we seem to have hit some sort of stride on vaccinations?
Oh, yes. Vaccination is the solution. If, say, 60 to 70% of the adult population is vaccinated tomorrow, we will be back to a great part of our business and we'll be going back into a growth mode. So, yes, that is the biggest hope that we can have. Vaccinations have increased, but vaccinations haven't gone ahead smoothly. We require to see that big rollout of vaccination that we have seen in the past few days to roll out on a sustained basis, to build the confidence that vaccination will happen to a large number of people, which will enable us to lift the lockdown completely and go back to a normal life. That is the only solution. So it is the pace of vaccination that is still slightly worrisome. While the government has kind of promised in a way that vaccination will be more or less complete by the end of December 2021, There are doubts that it will actually happen. But even if it makes some progress, it's going to lift sentiments in a substantial way. We really think that's going to happen.
So let me talk a bit about what is being given in terms of aid in the interim. Now, Finance Minister announced an 8-point package. 4 were new items, 4 were earlier ones, and extensions of various schemes, credit guarantee, etc., to ease credit to stressed sectors, stressed individuals, for healthcare and other factors. Do you think all of this is helping at this point when we are still very unclear about where the end of this pandemic is?
Well, the end of the pandemic is vaccination. That solves all our problems. The new package announced by the finance minister yesterday is inadequate, and it focuses again on the supply side. So it increases liquidity, it increases the availability of credit. I don't think that is the place where the solution lies. So it may make a small marginal difference, but I don't think it's going to make a big difference. I don't think that is where the problem is. The problem is evaporated or dried up demand. I don't think this is going to improve demand in any significant way. It doesn't move the needle at all, in fact. So with due respect to all the effort made by the finance minister and the announcements, I think this is not going to be very effective. The most effective thing that the government is doing right now is to spread vaccination.
What about employment? Where is the trend that you see moving if we have a mild third wave, or end up vaccinating in enough numbers so as to not be hit too badly by a possible third wave? Do you see hopefully a steady improvement in employment numbers? May not get back to pre-pandemic levels anytime soon, but an upward graph?
Well, at the moment, I'm quite hopeful of the vaccination progressing well, and we ducking the third wave. The likelihood of that has improved over the last few days or a week or 10 days or so, because vaccination is starting to look promising. So it is possible that we may duck the third wave. One doesn't know. I'm not an epidemiologist to say whether there will be a third wave or there will not be a third wave. But if I have to lay a bet as a novice in trying to predict these things, I would say the probability of a third wave has reduced. But even if I assume that the probability of a third wave is lower today, and we will make progress on vaccinations, on vaccinating the country by and large, I think bouncing back for the economy cannot be taken for granted. It will not be easy. I don't imagine that suddenly all those MSME industries that were vanquished by the COVID will suddenly spring back to life. All those people who lost their jobs, particularly the salaried jobs, and their incomes will suddenly spring back and say, oh, nothing happened and we are back to action. I don't think the recovery in reality is going to be like this. The problem is all people who look at fast frequency indicators are going to say that, look, electricity generation has gone up, GST collection has gone up, and some of these indicators will start looking up. Good. But in reality, a large part of the MSME and the salaried people and the people who are living on daily wages have got a hit. And I don't think they will recover in just 1 or 2 seasons. This is going to be a sustained problem. It's going to be a lasting problem. Investments will still take time to come back. So the government will have to play a lead role in spurring the economy back to life.
Yeah, and an aggressive boost may be needed, as we may suffer economic symptoms, at least, of the pandemic for longer. Thank you so much, Mahesh Vyas, for speaking with us. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.